Welcome everybody to another edition of Podern Nerd. I am your host Chris Dace, aka the Dace Man from Tuesdays, the Dace Man Show, over on Twitch.tv and Dace Man and Friends. Joining me, as always, but for the first time here on Podern Nerd, Brian Gibson, aka Gibby from the Dace Man Show.
I made it! Yay!
So this is a different format, so the more that things change for the Dace Man Show, the more they stay the same. We started off recording podcasts, just audio, and then we moved into visual, and now we're back to audio.
They didn't like our faces, apparently.
No, and hopefully this one works, because it's also a just different format. So if you're not familiar with the Podern Nerd podcast, what we do is we take a topic, we break it down, and we just beat the living hell out of it until we can't talk about it anymore.
30 minutes in.
So today's topic, we're going to be talking about Blizzard Entertainment, or Gizzard, StarCraft, and that entire franchise. We've got the man, the myth, the legend that played this game to death, and me, the casual player, that will kind of guide him through the journey that is StarCraft. Because,
Love it.
Again, casual player, hardcore Blizzard fan on the line. So we're going to kick it right off, roll into the original release, March 31st, 1998. Bam! StarCraft is released to the public. It was started to develop in 1995 and shown at E3 in 1996, back when E3 mattered.
Yeah, you ain't kidding, back when it mattered. The whole thing I think is kind of crazy if you just look at that. So they started development, and then 1 year later, they showed it off at E3, and then 2 years after that, it launched. So it basically took them 3 years to make and develop a game. Just imagine that. Nowadays, It takes like fucking 10 to come up with a new IP. Minimum. It's insanity.
Well, I think the other crazy part is, too, if you just looking from a high level, they debuted this at E3. They now have their own convention.
They have their own stadium.
Yeah, and the interesting note that you marked down was this caused the creation of Blizzard Entertainment's film department. So, like, this is kind of like the seeds of it's becoming a monster that essentially today dominates the market.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably, well, their first massive hit was actually Warcraft, the original Warcraft.
Mm-hmm.
And that came out, I think, maybe 2 years prior to this. Don't quote me on that, I'm not sure. But when they started actually developing StarCraft, it was actually supposed to be Warcraft 2. It's supposed to be the expansion pack of it. They were originally titled Orcs in Space or something, if I remember correctly.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. And then they basically, midway through, figured out, oh, you know what, this isn't going to work. Just, I guess, Orcs in Space made no sense. So I don't know if you've ever actually played Warcraft 2 and compare it to StarCraft. I mean, it is insanity how similar they are. It is like you only have 12 units. The graphics look almost exactly the same when you're building. You get the same building blocks and everything. It is like scary similar, but that's because, like I said, they were trying to develop this as a second one in space, and they just completely like, oh, you know what? We created something even better.
That is an interesting note. So when this was released in 1998, did you get it out the gate? Like you said, you were a Warcraft fan first.
Yeah. So here's the crazy thing: is I got it in '98, but I got it when Brood War came out because the expansion came out in the same year. I didn't realize how quick the time turntables were on this. I thought there was a little over a year separation, but no, it's only 6 months, if that, separating them.
It comes out in March, and then 2 expansions come out, one in July and then one in November.
Yeah, so that was I came in basically around Christmas time in November is when I got this game, and then I lost my entire life.
Well, the weird thing, at least for me, I definitely came in after the expansion, but I came in probably 3 years after.
I was gonna say you're probably 2000.
Yeah, because at this point in '98, all we had as a family computer was a Commodore 64.
Yeah. I don't even remember what the hell I had. I think it was an IBM something, but that was back in the day when like I had to have a probably 20-foot freaking telephone wire to connect to our telephone, and we lost the telephone in the house.
Also, in the to date us for any of our younger listeners, that this is also the time we didn't have cell phones. So when you knocked out that house line, that house was off the grid.
It was, and then if somebody called you, you went off.
Yes.
Oh God, it was so brutal. But yeah, we said that freaking long ass cord because this is like one of the first games that I know of that was multiplayer to this extent,
Mm-hmm.
where you're actually teaming up and doing like live games with each other. I mean, I know there were like MMOs and stuff out there, but they weren't. I don't even know how they worked because a lot of them were usually through. Well, I guess they're through websites, so I guess they would have to have the. I guess you have to log in as well, but a little bit different.
Well, that was an interesting thing about this too, is Battle.net.
Yeah, not this game. I don't even think this started Battle.net. I think Warcraft did. Oh no, maybe this did. I don't know if Warcraft 1 was an online game or not. Warcraft 2 definitely was because
Mm-hmm.
I had Warcraft 2 and I played it for a little bit. It wasn't as good because there's only two races, and it were like basically if they had a warrior, you had a warrior. If they had to range it, you had to range it. There was no real balancing or anything because like it was literally just different skins. But it's a little bit. You had a couple unique units that had to bounce around, but it wasn't anything like StarCraft where you actually have three races and every race plays completely different than the other.
Well, we talked a little bit about the original. We're lumping it all together because, like you had said earlier, the release was just so quick. It was like every 3 months or every quarter, you were essentially getting a new version of this game or an extended version. The second one to come out was Insurrection in July 31st of 1998, which was first approved by Outside Expiation,
Oh,
but it was
this.
developed by Aztec New Media. So there was 30 new campaign
Yeah.
missions and over 100 new multiplayer maps, and was considered a failure due to the lack of quality. Again, as someone who probably came into the series at 2000, I did not notice this, and you might not even have noticed it because you said you came in around Christmas, and at this point, all three were out.
Yeah, actually, even if you looked at all four were out. Like that's the crazy thing because all of them came out in 1998. I didn't even know about these. They were technically sponsored, I guess, by Blizzard, so they allowed them to actually generate and develop these things. Um, but they didn't all they did is they gave you campaign missions and multiplayer maps. So my whole thing with the multiplayer maps and stuff is if you're an insurrection, I don't even know if you could play with people in Brood War.
At that point,
Yeah, because when you're playing Brood War, you can't play with people that were in the original.
it makes sense. Yeah,
Because
you
I
had the
mean,
two options at the beginning.
you could see them like in the battle.net and like the chat rooms and stuff, but they have their own little icons next to it. And you couldn't actually play with each other, but you could actually talk to each other. It's just kind of interesting how that. So I wonder if that might have actually hampered them as well, because if you didn't sell a lot of copies,
Yeah.
um, if you couldn't co-play with people, it really would kind of hurt you. I also heard that the insurrection one was apparently really, really easy. Um, and then the other one, retribution, was supposed to be really, really hard.
Yeah, because like you said, there was four to get all together in '98. The fourth one was Retribution, which was the second approved outside expansion. It was done by Wizard Works Software, and over 120 new multiplayer maps were released. The large campaign focused on three races like the original, but it was also unsuccessful. The big successful one was Brood War that came out November 30th of '98, and to me, that's kind of what we all remember.
Yeah, I mean that's the one that I think did the most with balancing. So, and they poured a shit ton of time into it in order to make sure it was balanced. I also think that's when the people actually started getting it into the editor. the map editor, to where people could actually start making things and start creating custom scripting and stuff. Because that was really, really big as well with these type of games, where they kind of just let you do whatever you want. You can use their basically a Blizzard tool in order to create your own maps or create your own scenarios and things like that, which was really, really neat.
Well, that is an interesting concept for this game that at least I remember vividly from playing this was the user map settings. And like the campaign itself is great, and we'll get more in detail about the original campaign, but you hit on it a little bit with the user map settings, which I just thought was extremely unique because it gave players the ability to be creative, develop their own challenges, and kind of model against other like popular things like pop culture.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, because like the map editor, it's kind of weird because like casual players probably did just the campaign, and
Mm-hmm.
then you have like somewhat more dedicated people, but not really like hardcore that would have done the using map settings. Like if they went into the online realm, they probably would have just stayed in the using map settings. They would have played like a bunch of games in there. And if they actually did quote unquote play the game, they would probably be playing like all the fast money games because it was like quicker. It was easier to play in theory because they somehow got the minerals to stack on top of each other. I still don't get that.
You're
But
absolutely describing me. I fell into that category there.
yeah, and then you have people like me who I was really into it. Like I played all the using map settings, but I also played the actual game. And this was also my first intro into the competitive gaming. I remember
Mm-hmm.
I used to have to go to friggin' the European servers. I have no idea why it was on the European servers. And then you have to talk to a bot. Bots were also another big thing then. But you have to talk to a bot, right? And then the bot would match you with somebody. You had to play X amount of qualifying matches. You would then get placed into a tier, and then you would basically play how they are nowadays, where you get if you get eliminated, you're out. If you stay in, you're in. Um, it was brutal, but it was fun. But like that's for people who are really hardcore into.
Well, you tapped into it a little bit with the saying that there was bots. I remember the entire structure of Battle.net had bots, clans, private chat rooms. Like it was a huge online community, which I don't know if there was anything kind of like that around that time besides this, or at least
Yeah,
things within the Blizzard realm.
God, I completely forgot about clans and stuff. Yeah, I was in a freaking clan. I was the second in my clan because of how good I was. Oh God, yeah, and you would have to use old keys from like your other games, and you can put it onto a bot that would actually allow you to control a chat room. God, that was crazy. I completely forgot about that. But yeah, you
It,
you would just literally own things, and then you can actually have the bots play games with you and stuff. So like I remember we're in like chat rooms, and you would start a quizzo game or something. As the first person to type in the right answer, I would keep track of scores.
yeah, like, and to me, like that's wild because it was kind of the foundation of what we experience today in games. Or Twitch. Twitch is actually a prime example of bots entertaining viewers, even though back then it was the clan members or essentially the biker gang of computers.
Yeah, I mean anyone. I mean a lot of times anyone could join them unless your bot was set to hostile mode and just bans everyone who comes in. It wasn't approved, but yeah, I remember we used to have like friendly clan battles in it where you just, team A versus team B versus and you just have to add up the points.
Mhm. And there was
Oh God.
rankings and stuff. Because like you said, you were
Yeah.
number two in your clan. I was bottom of the pit because I pissed off your leader all the time. Um, but there was a pecking order. It really was like a club that you would have seen outside of like a Freemasons club, a biker club, or something like that. There was a ranking, an order, and an execution to everything that's been done in that clan.
Yeah, I mean honestly you're right. It's kind of interesting because that kind of concept stayed in with almost all of the games until I hate to say it, until like StarCraft 2 came out.
Yeah,
Because when StarCraft 2 came out, well, I'm trying to, I don't know
there
if
was
it's
a little bit
StarCraft.
of it. I remember seeing because you had the clan tag usually in front of the username was like parentheses blah 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 parentheses whatever the clan may have been, and then your username.
Yeah, there might, but it wasn't. It's not like World of Warcraft. I mean, really hit the friggin' net home with the guilds and stuff. Diablo. I'm trying to remember if Diablo 3 or StarCraft 2 came out. Whatever one of them came out first. I think it might actually been Diablo
I
3.
think so.
It really just ruined the community because it really disincentivized like talking to people, which was very weird. Because like in Diablo 2, is you were very much guild related and chatting and stuff, and you can like chat between like Diablo and StarCraft and Warcraft. Because I eventually, when I stopped playing StarCraft, I actually moved on to Warcraft 3. I was still high up in my guild because you can always be I could still be in the same chat rooms and stuff.
Yeah.
It's like basically a big community. Um,
Well, yeah, the
but
whole
then StarCraft,
battle.net was the concept of that.
yeah, but then you went into StarCraft 2, and there's like there's no chat rooms really. It's like you have to work at trying to get into a chat room, which is kind of crazy. Because it's all built in a UI now that just simplifies everything to where you can just click on one thing and get to wherever you want to go, and it really did kind of disincentivized guilds or clans or talking to people, which is kind of just how the world's going today.
So when it comes to the we were talking a little bit about the user map settings. The what was your favorite? Because to me, it was always the defense ones. We had to either do like cannon defense, the fucking wild ones, because you think this game came out in '98, and in 2001 there was defend the World Trade Centers.
That's
Um,
right. Didn't take them long. Didn't take them
it didn't
long.
take them long. It was there was some kind of event. Instead of protecting the queen, it was protect the trade centers, and they were like two
Yeah.
nexuses. Uh,
I'm almost positive, which I feel like is kind of crazy, that that game existed before they went down.
yeah.
Like I'm almost positive it did, and then they went down, and then that game took off. It's like, how fucked up are we?
Oh, I remember. I remember playing the like again, like you said. How messed up is it? I was playing this like weeks after the event
Yeah,
had happened. Like the nation was still mourning, and on StarCraft user map settings, you were playing the game. And of course, the
exactly,
terrorists were
exactly.
Zerg, and you were Terran because America.
Yeah, and you can sometimes get a Protoss depending upon the game, but yeah,
Yeah.
it was. I honestly, I didn't. I wasn't a real big fan of defensive games. I won't lie. They just kind of annoyed me because they were like so position based and luck, well, not, and somewhat luck based because it's whoever got in the front first and got the good turret positions usually did the best, and then if you're like stuck in the back, you're fucked.
Yeah,
You know what I
and then
mean?
by the time they broke through, you were beat because you never got any resources.
Yeah, and then you're just screwed, and there's nothing you can do at that point.
There was also the games that had you like role play. I remember doing like a Dragon
Uh,
Ball Z one that took you through the sagas.
they were okay, but my only problem with those games were they were long.
Yes.
I mean, long. It's sort of try to there's one where you had to like survive. So you start out the game and you're either like a ghost, a marine, or fire bat or whatever, and you go inside a bunker and they just the Zerg just keep trashing your bunker for a while. And then eventually they stop coming after you and you gained up a shit ton of resources, and then you kind of try and expand out and not die.
Yeah,
But
like
you're
it
just
just gets.
basically one hero. I don't even remember what the hell the name of it was, but it was I actually enjoyed them, but that's another one of those games that were forever. Like
Yeah,
you're
because
in a game for hours.
they would send wave after wave, and in some instances it never stopped.
Hmm.
Like you were there until you
Yeah,
died.
yeah, and you had to just pop out so you can get access to whatever it was and build more things, and then eventually you could, in theory, start pushing them back. But yeah, they were brutal. They were fun, but they were brutal. I would say I had probably two games, but my favorite game by far, which depressed me that they never really brought it back into StarCraft 2, um, was cats and mice.
I
So the
remember
whole
that.
Yeah, I love that game, and I loved it. Be I'm that fucking weirdo, I guess, in the corner, right? That people just don't like. But I would always play the cat. Always. 100% of the time play the cat. People loved playing with me because I play the cat, but I was a fucking amazing cat. I very, very, very rarely lost. Very rarely lost. And that's why people love playing with me because I actually challenge the mice to actually play good. Um, because whenever I did play as a mouse or whatever, you would just beat the shit out of the cat because most of the time they don't know what the fuck they're doing, it seems like. I don't get it. But I always played the mouse. And that was back when me and Dan were fucking, we played that game I mean non-stop. And then the other game that I loved, which again me and Dan played all the time, was Kings and Knights.
I don't
That
remember that one.
game, that game was fun. And again, I'm that effing weirdo in the back of the room. I always played the freaking king. I hated playing the knights. Everyone wanted to play the knights except me. And I'm like, I don't understand you people. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. Um, but yeah, I always played the king, and then I won majority of the times because kings are just broken if you know what the hell you're doing. It's just mind blowing to me. But uh
I
yeah, we
remember there was another map like based on a movie because Lord of the Rings was big at the time.
hmm
Defend Helm's Deep,
Oh God, yeah, I remember that.
and essentially the Zerg were the orcs, and they would always come rushing the structure, and then
hmm
you pretty much had an army defending Helm's Deep to the point where like it was weird if you won because if you watch the movies, you're not supposed to.
Yeah,
Um,
well, a majority of the time you lose because eventually you get swarmed. You just have to, if you do win, it was a lot of, usually you have to have somebody on your team who's really, really good at microing, and you have to have really, really good map awareness to have your units in the right areas. But yeah, it was interesting. I mean, I didn't really play that one that much, but it wasn't really my type of thing. Um,
the,
I
the,
also played freaking zone control. So you would start out with a bunker. It was a chessboard basically. You start out with a bunker and you would just keep spawning units.
yes. Oh my god, I remember that. I actually enjoyed playing that because it also shows back up in StarCraft 2, doesn't it?
Yeah, StarCraft 2 had it as well. StarCraft 2 took the one where every box gave you a different unit. I
Mm-hmm.
personally really, really like the air zone control. So you were usually either a wraith or a scout.
Yeah.
I actually enjoyed them. But yeah, there were a ton of them. There was like Evolves was one where you had to kill pin things, and as you kill more things, you get a different unit after a while. That was fun.
What was the
Um,
one that if you're in like a circle, and was that Evolve where there was like five bases and you would just keep spawning the same unit over and over and over again? And
yeah, and
then
then the objective was to kill a bunker usually.
yeah,
Yeah,
God, this entire conversation makes me want to fire it up and play this right now.
I know, and then that was the greatest thing about when they came out with the remaster.
Yeah, you had the ability to.
Yeah, and then you had much better graphics. It was like, oh my God, this is amazing.
The only other user map setting I remember that we didn't touch base on yet was the impossible mazes that they would do.
Yeah,
Where like
the mazes were in there. Oh God, Jake loved those fucking things, and I'm like, I don't get it. Or it's like they also have like the Zergling Run, which is almost the same concept.
yeah,
And they were fucking brutal. Those games, half the time you would go into them, and the game's over in the first 2 minutes because everyone fucking died to the first obstacle.
yeah, which is crazy, and to think that there's somebody who spent the time to build that obstacle.
Yes, it was nuts. But people love that game for some reason.
It was
Oh,
it was fun if it was there. I never finished one because like you also relied
yeah.
on at the time the mouse with a ball.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
you were relying on old school keyboard and mice, not what you have
Yeah.
now.
exactly.
So like one false click and boom into the wall and you're dead.
That reminds me of another game, Dodge the Rapist.
Oh my god, yep. Uh,
That was another one because if your mouse was not good, you were fucked so hard in that game.
or if you lagged, because this was also the time where internet was not what internet was.
Yeah, yeah, you were screwed if you lagged. You lagged, you're dead. There's nothing you can do about it. You're dead.
And back then too, like you had said, you had to run a line to your phone, but this is also you had maps that had thousands of these archons and stuff that they would just
Yeah,
move back and forth, and if you did not have a good connection or a good computer,
you
you
were
were
fucked.
beat.
Yeah. You usually once the next wave started, you just had to let it go. You know what I mean? You just had to let it go for a couple seconds and then get your computer up and running just before you started going out to the maze. Oh God, they were fun.
Well, we're gonna leave the StarCraft expansion from the '98 for just a little bit. We're gonna take a little sidetrack to something that using these map settings and these creators and these developers was developed by a company called or a group called MicroStar Software called Stellar Forces, which was an unauthorized game created within the game, and they were sued by Blizzard, and Blizzard won. So all the copies were told to stop distribution. But the crazy thing is, they used Blizzard's game editor to create this game.
Yeah, so this happens. This is actually quite important. Like people don't realize this. This is the first time that somebody tried ripping off something of Blizzard, and this is what really gave Blizzard their hard stance against uh like IP control, making sure no one does fucks with their IP at all.
Mm-hmm.
Because it happened quite frequently. This is just like the first one. I mean, it happened many times in StarCraft because they gave you that map editor, to where people could actually literally build a game, build a campaign because they literally gave you the editor. Um, so it was this kind of started their hard stance at it. And then if you think about like any of their games where like they're constantly going after, especially like hackers. I mean, they have any. If you fuck with any of their IP, this is basically why. And they just go after you and go after you hard. I mean hard. There's only one instance, which I believe is in here later, where they actually didn't destroy the person who created something.
It
Because
is
even
nuts.
like, because even like WoW, when that creator who created the vanilla WoW server, fucking Blizzard went after them and after them hard, and then Blizzard created their own just to sell it again. Bastards.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that this company that kind of promotes so much freedom within its world to do these things, like we were talking like all the endless options with user map settings, gets very defensive when they actually take that and run with it outside of battle dot like their realm.
Yeah,
Uh,
if you can if you're trying to make any money off their games, they'll come after you basically. I mean, they'll come after you hard. It's really what it is.
yeah,
It's kind of insanity. Because they sue people a lot as a company because they just don't want their IP fucked with. I mean, I remember them freaking back in the day suing people for freaking creating map hacks and creating like all the hacks and shit inside the game. Because they were very stringent. I mean, they used to do all those a ton of like mass bannings. Like they happen nowadays, but nowhere near as frequently as what Blizzard was doing back in the day. That shit used to go on like every month. There used to be a mass banning of freaking hackers. Um, I mean, games today do it, but it's very few and far between. But I mean, it is what it is.
well, kind of alluding to the fact that you say how they go after him hard. So this is obviously a money grabbing corporation. They took this entire StarCraft bundle and capitalized on a little system that was out at the time called N64. And we got StarCraft 64, which came out in 2000, and would be the last one for almost a decade and a half of any version of StarCraft you were going to get. So I know you played it a little bit during one of our game-a-thons, but I don't think you had a 64 as a kid. I know I did. I had a PlayStation. The only time I was
Yeah.
exposed to it is when I went to my friend's, Matt's. He had it. And it was kind of like a watered down version of what you got on
It's
the
original.
PC. Yeah.
It basically is original. I don't know if it had Blue Reward in it or not, but it was pretty brutal to play with because I'm so used to a mouse and keyboard. But I mean, it wasn't bad. It just wasn't. Uh, it just the controls were just that was the whole thing that got me with that. The controls were really really crappy. I
Let me
thought the graphics were actually better on it than on the computer, but they also had a couple years, I guess, better to have better technology, better graphics, I guess.
Well, I think the interesting note is this is also their first what foray into consoles. Because I mean, the next
Uh,
time they attempt it's what Diablo 3.
well, they tried doing Ghosts, which was supposed to be a console, but
Mm-hmm.
that kept getting murdered. I mean, murdered and murdered. I'm trying to remember. They had like arcade games, like put into an arcade, because
Mm-hmm.
like the Lost Vikings and stuff was an arcade game, which is like one of the
Oh,
first
okay.
ones. And they also had that street racing game, whatever the hell it was, which again was a an arcade game. Um, Warcraft was their first PC game. Warcraft was actually their first game because originally they weren't even considered Blizzard Entertainment until like I think they developed Warcraft. I'm trying. I think it was called Silicon something was the original name of Blizzard Entertainment, and then they changed their name
So the
a
company
couple
that
years
I
after.
jokingly refer to as Gizzard used to be Silicone.
Yeah, I forget how it was Silicon something. I forget. But yeah, it used to be that. They used to do emulators, or not emulators. They used to do arcade games,
Okay, makes
basically.
sense. Like the
Um,
actual stand up things you would see in like a skating ring and stuff.
yeah,
Like that probably
exactly.
they are now in bars because everybody who used to play them are old enough to go to a bar.
Exactly. It's basically like a big Dave and Buster's.
Yeah, but not
But
even like I would even think people who listen to the show now, Dave and Buster's is even more advanced than what you're referring to.
yeah, exactly. Because it's basically this is like Pac-Man days,
Yeah,
basically.
which
Because
they're making a comeback. If you look at some of those like stand up machines, you pay a pretty penny now to get them because anything that was retro is now hot stuff.
it is. You ain't kidding on that. But yeah, the Lost Viking was just basically a freaking shooting game. It wasn't like, or not a shooting game. It was like a sort of like a Donkey Kong where you're
Mm-hmm.
constantly throwing the barrels down. It's basically a side scroller jumping thing. I mean, they also had like they had a shooting game which was like the ship. It's a pretty shooting things to
Mm-hmm.
rack up points, dodge missiles, blah blah blah. They had a racing game which was like left right. It was like you're just jumping in between lanes. It
Like
wasn't like you're
Excite
actually
Bike.
yeah you weren't actually driving. You were just switching lanes basically, not to hit things. Um, I mean, they did a bunch of shit like that. They also worked with other companies to help develop their shit. It wasn't like anything major. And like I said, then the first one that really, I'm pretty sure they changed their name and then developed, basically, or maybe they changed their name once they released it, but they when they released Warcraft,
Mm-hmm.
and then Warcraft was really the stepping stone. And I'm pretty sure that was in 1995 or 1996.
Well,
Um, and
to
then
me,
their second major IP, obviously, is StarCraft.
the interesting thing with StarCraft 64, it's obviously a grab at console players because PC gaming probably wasn't that big of a deal at this point. Because if you're a Nintendo 64 fan, you probably started with an NES, went up to the Super NES, and then went to the 64.
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, I can see that if you were stuck with those. Yeah,
Because you
I mean,
think
I
of
went from Nintendo right into PlayStation. I didn't go into
I took
just
some
yeah.
back ass way where I started off with an NES, got to a Sega Genesis, and ended up at PlayStation. It's like all of a sudden we just like, you know what, nothing's better than NES. We're not going with Nintendo for a while. Not until the GameCube.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much went from Nintendo, uh, the Super Nintendo, into I'm trying to remember. I think I went into StarCraft basically, so PC gaming and then PlayStation.
Hmm. But to me, at least with the release of StarCraft 64, our age bracket and maybe people a little bit older are now just getting exposed to computers at school and stuff. Like we're dealing with the Oregon Trail. You're dealing with
Yeah.
the typing type games like the Space Blasters and all that stuff. So you're getting really exposed to it. So a smart move by Blizzard is like, okay, consoles they probably already have. Let's put StarCraft out there, and then if they want the full experience, now that they know about it, somebody be like, hey, if you like that, you should definitely play it on the PC.
Maybe I'm sure that's probably what they were trying to do. Unfortunately, PC gaming and console gaming are two completely different
But
modes, basically, or two different genres.
but it was kind of
It's
in
very
its
rare you'll find somebody that goes in between both.
it's kind of in its infancy at this point because if you think about it, console gaming in 2000 has been around for at least 18 years at this point. So the
Yeah,
person
probably a little longer. Yeah.
Yeah, because the NES came. Well, I'm not even thinking about the Atari, but I'm saying with like the NES, like most of gamers' first systems are probably that. Anyone who says, "Oh, my first system was Atari," probably still doesn't play games
Okay. Yeah. I guess that
because
makes
like
sense.
they were limited at what they could do on an Atari, whereas the NES is like, "Oh shit, I'm Mario now. Let's fuck things up." Um, but to me, it's weird that they pushed this out for the StarCraft brand, which really feels like a move to start bringing people into the franchise. And this would be the last thing for almost 17 years. Um, Before we
Well,
get to what they come out with, there's a project in between that you allude to a little bit, um,
mhm.
which was StarCraft Ghost, which was supposed to be a stealth action game. It started development in 2001, so it started development 3 years after the final release of the expansion of StarCraft Brood War, and was ultimately shelved in 2006. So at this point, you and I are out of high school. Uh,
Yeah, so this one was a cock tease the entire time because it kept going and then they would shelf it. They brought it back and they would shelf it, brought it back and they shelf it. This was that game like everyone, at least I was like really excited about because this is when first person shooters were starting to like Medal of Honor. There are a couple big name first person shooters that were coming out. Um, and it was kind of shocking that they just kept putting it off, putting it off, putting it off. And eventually they just shelved it. I'm sure they used their learnings from it because they eventually did create a first person shooter. Um, and I feel like the story stayed because if you play StarCraft 2, one of the DLCs you can get is the Nova missions, which is, hello, what this game was supposed to be about. Um, so it's kind of interesting to see that they basically shelved it, but they didn't really kill it per se. It just took and made it a DLC. It's
do,
very weird.
do you think this was the groundwork of to what we would have experienced with Overwatch when it comes
I
to shooters? Because to me, at least my knowledge of Blizzard, the first person shooter is not really their thing yet.
Yeah, it's definitely not their thing. Definitely not their thing at this point in time. I think it's a foray into it. I think they had an issue with trying to do it because as of that second, they've not had a first person game before. Because if you think about Diablo and stuff, you're always third person. It's not a first person like you can look anywheres. It's always been pretty much a top down game. Every one of their games. Um, so I'm thinking that's kind of what gave them some issues, but at least allows them to kind of develop and then learn from it basically. Um, I don't know if it'd be kind of interesting if we could ever figure out how much learnings they actually learned from that to get into Overwatch. I have a feeling probably I have a feeling there are some, but probably not many. I think the biggest thing that came out of this is the fact I'm pretty sure they just recycled the story that they already developed and just made it DLC.
Hmm. Well,
So,
here's the crazier part. As we continue our march through the StarCraft franchise. When this game first came out, you and I were both in elementary school, fourth and fifth grade. We were finishing up fourth, heading into fifth, and by the halfway through our fifth grade, they had the entire thing out on PC. And then by the sixth grade, when we're getting ready to graduate elementary school here in New Jersey, they had it out on the 64. Now,
mhm.
mind you, this was our childhood. 10 years after we graduate, 11 years after we graduate from high school, we are now introduced to StarCraft 2, Wings of Liberty. Now, the interesting note is it started development in 2003. So it started development when we started high school. It was announced a year after we finished high school in 2007 and was released in 2010. So here we are, 4 years removed. We're back into StarCraft 2.
That's right.
But we wouldn't get another crack at the original StarCraft remastered until 11 years after high school. So to me, that blows my mind that the game it's essentially pretty much our life if you're running through it. But
Yeah.
Wings of Liberty comes out in 2010. Um, what were your thoughts now? I know I was stoked. This is probably the last physical version I buy of a Blizzard game.
Physical version? Yeah. I don't even I'm trying to remember. I don't even know if I have a physical copy. I mean, I think from this point from Diablo 3 onwards, because Diablo 3 came out before this
Mm-hmm.
onwards, I think even actually the first WoW and Burning Crusades. Burning Crusade, I think, was the last physical copy I got. And everything after that has all been digital download through the app or whatever the hell they call that thing now.
The new
BattleNet.
version of BattleNet.
Yeah. But yeah, everything ever since that has just been digital download. But
The only reason I knew I had the disc is because I was going through my closet like a couple weeks ago and found the box and had Jim Raynor staring at me. Not the youthful Jim Raynor that had hope in his eyes, the run down version that we now meet in Wings of Liberty.
that's right. Smoking a cigar, right?
Oh, for sure. But
Yeah.
it's a weird concept to me too because this show we're aging ourselves because we literally grew up through the tech boom and gaming boom, where you had the disc, you popped it in, and the disc stayed in there as you played. We now live in a society where discs aren't a thing.
Yeah, you ain't kidding on that one.
You don't get a
Yeah,
disc drive on your laptop or your
I was gonna
desktop.
say, yeah, most computers now don't even come with a drive.
So it's like, okay, we've moved on. But Wings of Liberty really reintroduces a whole next generation into it because it's, God, what, 12 years after the original release?
Yeah,
What were your thoughts? Like, because it's new, improved, and kicking some ass in 2010.
kicking some ass. That's right. Um, I loved Wings of Liberty. And it came back with a vengeance. It was everyone thought at this point in time that strategy games were dead, and then Blizzard fucking brings out StarCraft 2 and says, "Bitch, no, it's not." I mean, it took off. Wings of Liberty was definitely peaked. I think that was probably the highest of all the expansions, because then it started trailing down. Therefore, after, but I mean, it still stayed up there. But it definitely allowed Blizzard to showcase their cinematics the best. Because if you looked at like Diablo 3 and stuff, I mean, they weren't, the cinematics were good, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't like nowhere near what StarCraft 2 was. I mean, the amount of cinematics in Wings of Liberty Plus is just beautiful works of art. I mean, you're basically getting enough cinematics to equate to a full length movie. It's
It
like an
was
hour and 20 minutes. It's insanity.
it was also a measuring stick of how well your computer was doing.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
Because I
But
remember when this game came out, at least for me, this was the beginning of my career. What I do now for work is what I was starting to do back then. And I
Mhm.
remember firing this up on a laptop. Won't say if it was work or personal, but I was firing it up on a laptop and playing this game, and those graphics just whew, taxed the hell out of the laptop I was bringing with me.
Mhm.
And it was crazy because I would play this in a hotel. We would always try to get up on the internet and play together. It was not successful because this was also at the time where I would think hotels weren't getting their stuff together when it came to internet speeds, because now that's a selling point when you stay at a place. And
Yeah.
it just, to me, it was another boom again, because at that point I don't think I had played a PC game since the original StarCraft.
I mean, I was playing PC games that entire time, but yeah, it was for me. It wasn't as big of a shock because I was playing WoW,
Mm-hmm.
so my tower already had to be pretty beastly in order to handle the graphics there. Because like especially I'm used to 40-man raids. I mean, at this point in time, they were fucking 10 and 5-man raids, but I still was keeping it up to do pretty hefty stuff because like I was still doing like at least group battlegrounds and stuff where there are like 40 plus people in it.
I find it funny if we ever do a Warcraft episode, I can talk to at least 2005 to 2010 just because of it impacted our social life. So I look
Yeah.
forward to that conversation down the road of like, hey, you guys want to go to like a movie Friday? Can't rating. And it's like, what?
God. Yeah, that needs its own little.
It would be an
I don't want to go
interesting
to.
topic for another episode, but
I was gonna say I don't want to go down that rabbit hole.
it's crazy that that game had such a cultural impact. And to me, again, this is why to me it's such a huge gap since I was on a PC, because I
Yeah.
went from StarCraft to StarCraft 2. But continue.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, you're right. So it's, for me, like I said, for me the hardware wasn't that big of an issue. I mean, definitely all of the Blizzard games, um, definitely got me good at tearing apart a computer and putting them back together. Solely because I constantly kept upgrading. Because this is back in the day when, technology was moving extremely fast. Like nowadays, it's nowhere near what it was back then.
Oh yeah, yeah, yep.
Like a computer, like this computer that I'm working now is like, probably 6 years old or something, and I'm still able to play
I'm just
AAA
personally
games.
looking around my desk and seeing all the external hard drives, and that alone has changed so much.
Yeah, it's insanity. But like now, it's like I got like a 6-year-old computer I can still play AAA games. Back in the day, back when like the original StarCraft came out, dude, if you're like 2 years out, like that computer can't play AAA games anymore because the graphics, the processing power, the RAM that's required, it just skyrockets. Like you had to be able to sit there and rebuild your computer, or you had to go out and just keep buying new computers in order to keep it up to date in order to actually play these games. But yeah, it was like I said, I mean, you've seen me. I tore your computer apart downstairs, what, 3, 4 times now? I
Several
have no
times.
problem. Yeah, I have no issues doing it now, and that's
Which
purely because of these games right here.
the crazy thing is that computer was built at the time this game debuted, and it is the insides of that computer are no longer the same as of what they were when that game debuted.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. New power plant, new cooling system.
The only thing
The
that's the
only
same
thing,
is the motherboard.
motherboard and the processor.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that's the same. Yeah, everything else, I think because even the RAMs changed, the video cards changed. Yeah, we
Yep.
changed pretty much everything in there.
Yeah.
It's the same. It's just, but to be honest, it's almost the same with my tower here. I got a new video card in it, new power plant, new RAM. I didn't change my. I didn't have to change my cooling system. Yours just went to effect for some reason. I have no idea why.
That was Dell's like 1 month screw up that they never revisited. They're like, oh, let's, nuclear power powers most of the world. Let's make a silo for a fan. And then they went, that was dumb. Let's never do that
Yeah,
again.
exactly, exactly. But yeah. So, but like I said, to me, I can tear these things apart, put them right back together. I tore my old laptop apart a couple times and put it back together. It's how Blizzard is the reason why I've gotten good at this. I mean, I used to be able to fix the red ring of death back on the freaking Xbox 360 days, solely because I can tear apart electronic things and then put them back together.
It,
I
it,
can thank StarCraft for that.
it is a crazy culture that like these PC games and just being that transitional generation that has dealt with all this stuff that we can tear apart. Like I remember tearing apart my PS3 all the time because I traveled with it. If
Yeah,
that fucker went down, I'm not buying a new one. I'm gonna fix the one I got. So it's crazy.
exactly, exactly. And that's something I feel like is really lost nowadays because I feel like most people, especially the young ones, will just buy new. It
Yes.
broke. I'm just gonna buy a new one.
And accept the fact that every time a new generation of something comes out, they're just moving ports around. They're not actually giving you any good features. They're just moving things around
Phones are the same
location
thing.
wise.
That drives me freaking crazy. Phones. It's like they're not doing anything to it, yet
You gotta have it.
everyone. Yeah, you gotta have it. Get the hell out of here. No, I don't. I don't have to have shit.
But back to StarCraft. After Wings of Liberty came out in 2010, it would set off a chain of expansion upon expansion upon expansion, not just video game wise, but on the story and the lore of StarCraft, which is so huge and to me would make a great cinematic universe if you ever get bored, Kevin Feige. But the next one is Heart of the Swarm that came out in 2013 and really was the Zerg campaign of this trilogy that would be coming out.
Oh yes, Zerg. I love you. It's my race right there, baby. I used to play that. That was even from freaking the original. Zerg was the shit, yo. Zerg was the shit.
Always a Protoss guy. Sorry.
Protoss was my number two. I won't lie. It's pretty good.
No one ever
Number
wants to be the
two.
humans.
Yeah. I couldn't. But the people who knew how to play them, they were really fucking good if you knew how to play them. I just couldn't stand the turtle and friggin' slow push out. Because that was even the same thing in Wings of Liberty. You turtled, slow pushed out. And as long as you don't overextend, you in theory win. But yeah, it was fucking turds. But yeah, the Zerg one came out. I really enjoyed that one. That was actually the first one that I actually beat in Brutal.
Mm-hmm.
Because the original Wings of Liberty was I eventually did beat that one in Brutal. It just took me a while. Just because I just really suck with the turn pieces. It is what it is. I just couldn't do it. Um, but that was fun. And then what? Legacy of the Void came out, which is the Protoss campaign, and I beat that one easily in Brutal. I
Two
actually
years
felt like
later.
that one. Yeah, I actually felt like that one for some reason went nerfed difficulty. I don't know why. Um,
Because Protoss is the shit. They just get things done easier.
I guess you're right. Maybe, yeah. Because I beat that one in Brutal pretty easily.
That's
Granted,
where
I
I
beat.
fell off. I never played Legacy of the Void. I have it. I've never played it.
Oh man, yeah. It's really good. The ending makes you play all the races. Um, so I had to play a fucking two games I think as Terran, which is really shitty. But I did beat them. It just took fucking forever. Um, but it's a great ending. I won't lie. It's a shame that the way they ended it. Don't think I don't know how you can continue the storyline unless you just choose all new characters or you choose a different time period. Like I think the time of Raynor, Kerrigan, Zeratul is done basically because the way they ended it. I mean, honestly, it was a great ending. I won't lie. Um, it just it's a shame that it's basically capping off the game in totality, basically.
Well,
Um,
other games have done that before and have seen success. The first game that came to my mind when you're telling like the story getting capped and then still having a successful like sequel to it, Infamous. That was a game for the console where you either got to choose to be a hero or a villain, and you followed the guy Cole through two installments of it, and then on the third installment, it was the legacy of Cole, but you were another powered human that would either go good or bad. So I mean,
that's what I mean. The only way I could see it working is if you basically have to just go and redo it. Like you get to choose new characters. You can't use I'm saying like the original crew basically. I don't
Yeah.
see how you can I really don't see how you can bring them back. I mean, maybe Rainer you could, but that was about it. I don't think you could do anything with the rest of them. But yeah,
So after Legacy of Void debuts in 2015, a year later you get the Nova Covert Ops in 2016,
that's right, Nova.
which you said was pretty much a rehash of that failed project that never came out at the beginning of the century.
I think it was a rehash. I don't know for a fact because no one knows what the fucking Nova missions were. The original one was.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at least to my knowledge, I've
And
never seen anything leaked about it. I just know it's a first-person shooter revolving around a character named Nova, who is a ghost, a specter ghost. I mean, it's coincidental. That's what this expansion was: is Nova, specter ghost, and her stories. I'm just saying. It's just not a first person. It's top down. It's basically a normal StarCraft game. That's what I'm saying. I feel like that's what they did.
mm-hmm.
Um,
Took the
I'm not.
concept and then redid it for
Yeah,
the
exactly.
style.
I'm sure they maybe the timeline changed or something, but it has a lot of similarities. Because like I said, they took them for what, freaking 6 years until they decided that they're just going to can it.
And then 10 years
So
later, you got the Covert Ops.
exactly. So I mean, they clearly had a storyline already built. They already had this character already built. The first time she shows up is in Wings of Liberty.
Mm-hmm. I remember her.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So it's just it is what it is. That's what I feel like they did. I don't know if that is exactly what they had written or if they wanted to have happen, but I feel like they probably stole a lot of it from there, just because why not? You've already spent time developing it, and it's not didn't make any money. Hey, here you go, make some money off of this.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah,
A year after that, us nerds from the 90s got a nice little release of StarCraft Remastered, which was kind of a boost for a few months. It kind of fizzled out afterwards. Still big in South Korea because they love this game. I
yeah, they
remember
do.
the moment they announced it. It was like, "Yep, shut up, take my money. I'm gonna buy it. I want to play
Uh,
it."
yeah, it's the
Uh,
same with the freaking. I'm waiting for the Warcraft Reforged. Like that's another one. Just here you go. Here's my money. I don't care.
yeah.
It doesn't matter. I want it.
Well, and the crazy thing too is that we talked about it earlier. We had to. If you ever wanted to play that game again, my laptop, your computer, like there's no disk space anymore, so you had to get it.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
really kind of had your hands tied. The other thing I have on my list is called Commanders.
Yeah, the Commanders. That's really the big thing for StarCraft right now. So the people who still play that game basically play Commanders, which is, I mean, I tried. My only thing is it's like fucking Activision. God, it's a fucking money grab, and it's just so irritating. Like, I get it, but it's like, no, grow the fuck up. Stop doing this to me.
Yeah.
But it's just it's basically a money grab. It's a good money grab. At least you get something out of it. It's just I feel like the commanders are overpriced. Because as they develop new commanders, they charge you for every single one, which is just
Ew. That's just ew.
yeah, that's what drives me nuts with it. If they didn't charge me for it, I wouldn't care. Or if it was like a one-time buy and I got all of them and any new one, I would get them. I'd be okay with it. But no, they charge you for every single fucking commander, which I think is just ridiculous. Ridiculous. That they could even do that because it's all basic. Have you played it? I don't think you probably have because you didn't play Legacy of Void, have you?
I have not.
So basically, what it is you'll play a campaign mission from any of the three
StarCraft 2?
games.
Okay.
Yeah, any of the three of them, right? But you're gonna play with a partner, so it's you and somebody else.
Okay.
And then there's difficulties, right? So you can play from like crazy brutal difficulty to an easy mode. So in Legacy of well, if you didn't play Legacy of the Void. Shit, this is what sucks. So
No, go
when
ahead.
you play Legacy of the Void and you're in it, you have that flying mothership, right? And the mothership gives you the special powers, right? So you can use these powers whenever you want to. And it's usually have like a timer reset, like X amount of time, then you can use it again. And it could be fucking like shooting a big pulse laser down, increasing or dropping probes, or I mean, you can really customize it. Depends upon basically how in the first Legacy of the Void you could choose between two tech trees basically on units. This one it was really buffing up your mothership, and then in Legacy of the Void it was really buffing up Kerrigan. Right, so that was their little tweak. Was basically you buffed up your mothership, and your mothership could then do crazy shit on the map whenever the cooldown happened. Was really what it was. So the commanders basically took that to another level. So you could have some of them were like Legacy of the Void based, where you can buff up a hero, which in that case was Kerrigan, or um, what the hell is the name? Not Zeratul. Well, Zeratul's one of them. Zeratul gets buffed up that way, and then there's other ones where like that mechanical guy. God, I don't know any of their freaking names, which just really sucks. But
We'll go with the
Legacy of the Void,
Terminator.
he's yeah. Well, the Legacy of the Void, the guy that was in the machine shop, right? So he had
Hmm.
like a mechanical arm and stuff. So he's in there. So he actually like his special is building shit, right? So a majority of the time you usually play and you would just like build a shit ton of defensive stuff, right? Because it's all buff. Like the bunkers get a big turret on top and has more range. You can put more people in it. Um, there's just a bunch of shit like that, basically. And then what you need to do is you need to level them up. And as you level them up, basically playing games and gaining experience, you gain more abilities or improved abilities
Hmm.
in order to then eventually be able to take on brutal mode, which is so it'll be a normal campaign mission, but they'll give the enemy multiple buffs. So like one of the buffs would be when a minion dies, spawn two of it.
Yeah.
So, your first thing, the first attack wave comes in, it's 10 Marines. Next thing you know, it's fucking 10, it's 20. It would usually spawn them as like the queen ability where it would spawn an infested Terran. So basically, it would spawn like 20 infested Terrans. So it's like it makes it a lot harder in order to actually beat it. Is really what it does. And then so it's not really like you're playing against people. You're really just playing against the computer, but you're playing
With
together.
someone, right? Yeah.
Yeah, as a team.
Makes
Um,
sense.
and usually it requires at least two people together in order to actually beat it. I don't know if you can actually beat any of them by yourself in Brutal. Like I think you really require somebody else. Just because you'll die in the first like 5-10 minutes. You'll never survive the first attack.
That sounds so much fun.
I mean, it is if that's like what you're into, but it's not. I really didn't like it because that's not. I'd rather just verse other people.
Yeah. That makes sense.
So it's a little bit. They're kind of attacking it from a different angle. I mean, I get it. I just it's not my preferred. Because when
So
I was playing, I just kept playing the original multiplayers, basically.
So the last game we have here before we kind of wrap up the actual release games, and go into kind of the legacy outside of gaming, isn't even made by Blizzard themselves. It was a fan-made MMO using the StarCraft 2 assets to develop, and was a third-person action RPG elements, which brought in from World of Warcraft, and the combat mechanisms that were used in Diablo, while also using the
Yes.
starship mechanics of FTL. What was that?
Faster than light.
Okay.
That's Matt. We talked about it like multiple times. We even brought it up when it was me, you, and Cheever doing the
Look at
top
you
games or whatever.
throwing back to an old
Jesus
Dace Man
Christ.
Show episode. It doesn't. I'm not going to retain acronyms.
Yeah, but yeah, that's a great game too. But
Anyway,
yeah,
the whole thing's called StarCraft Universe.
yeah, this one was effing nuts. Like if you were actually paying attention during the time frame, so this is after World of Warcraft. This is after Burning Crusades, and I believe it's after uh the Lich King, right? So I believe the Lich King just came out not that long ago. So that's the third one, and this is when um, World of Warcraft was starting to take was kind of seeing subscription issues. Basically, they were getting people to show up for game releases, stick around for a couple months, and then they would start dropping off
Yeah,
pretty quickly.
kind of
It's
like
still
people do with streaming services these days.
Yeah, it's still the same right now. Like when they put out a new expansion, it's just mind blowing how many people actually show up to play it. And it would usually survive for a couple, 5, 6 months, and then it would just snow dive out after that. But so this kid starts developing this game, right? And then Blizzard reached out to him, and then he starts freaking out on the internet, blah blah blah, because he thinks that they're going to because they basically asked him to come into the corporate office. So he's thinking
To
that
shut them
basically,
down.
yeah, exactly. He's thinking that they're going to shut him down and that they were just going to fucking destroy his shit. So they actually brought him in and they actually supported it, which was effing nuts. Like it was crazy. Um, but then the crazier thing after that is then they quote unquote uh it got leaked that there was a project called Titan coming out, right? And everyone and their mother thought it was going to be a StarCraft MMO. Everyone thought it was going to be that. It have actually eventually turned out to be, I believe it turned out to be, should
Diablo, the
probably,
mobile
we should,
game.
yeah, we should probably talk about it at some point. But Heroes of the Storm is,
Oh,
I'm
okay.
pretty sure, is what that game was. But everyone, everyone thought it was going to be a freaking StarCraft, and that was the reason they brought him in. Because I'm pretty sure after a certain while, they actually did hire him on. Like it was just like, they were smoking the flames here. It was insanity. Because everyone thought because they did so well with the MMO and that um, Warcraft wasn't doing well. It's doing well, but it's not doing as well as it was. That they were thinking that they were going to create a new MMO, and everyone thought it would be StarCraft because a new StarCraft hasn't come out at that point in time for almost 10 years.
Yeah.
So people were just like, "Oh my god, this is great!" And no, it didn't happen. But
Which I think you
it was
could
an interesting
follow
story.
that journey on the Dace Man Show.
Well, yeah, maybe. I
We've
don't
been
think we
around
go
since
back that far.
2013.
Yeah, well, that was before. This is back in
Oh, so
oh
you're talking before Wings of
eight.
Liberty.
Yeah, it's before Wings of Liberty.
Okay.
Yes, this is well before. It's like oh 08, oh 09,
Okay.
around then. But yeah, it was that was like a lot of talking town because people were like really excited, especially me because I everyone thought it was going to be a StarCraft MMO, like an official one made by Blizzard. Um, because the one that guy was making was like a good fan thing. It's really really shitty, but it was a good fan thing. Well, he didn't have the resources. It's just him. He didn't have the resources. Let's be realistic.
That's
Um,
fair. He had a
it
good
was
skeleton, probably just not very clean.
exactly. It had issues. He tried. I'll give him that. He tried. Um, he just if he would have had like the monetary support, like Blizzard said, we support you on this. Go ahead, do whatever you want to do. But they didn't really like financially back him. They didn't assist him in any way. They just like it's kind of and this is the first time that they ever done that. Like I don't know. I really don't know of another time when they allowed something like this to happen. You know
Well,
what I
yeah,
mean?
considering that, like, not just too long ago, we were talking about how they would go through hell and high water to shut you down if you messed with their IPs.
Yeah, I mean they went at this point in time. I mean this is when they went after freaking Dota because Dota was made in the Warcraft like because Warcraft and like it's really hard not to talk about Warcraft when you're talking about StarCraft because they're sort of the same game because they're in the same genre. But Warcraft 3, a game called Dota was made, and then they split off, and then they made their own Dota, and that's eventually what developed League of Legends, the mammoth that is League of Legends. I mean, they eventually tried suing them, and then they actually lost that lawsuit because um, they did it develop it using Blizzard's tools, basically. So they basically said that's basically what started that whole MOBA genre. And that's obviously why then Blizzard went in and tried making Heroes of the Storm and just complete. That's probably the only time they failed miserably is trying to follow them into that path. But yeah. But even StarCraft units showed up in there. Now I actually liked Heroes of the Storm, and I actually like playing the StarCraft units more so than any other ones. But it was unfortunately it had a lot of issues. It wasn't really well thought out, more haphazardly put together, hoping that it would work.
Well, outside of the games, StarCraft is huge. Like you had said, you really can't talk about StarCraft without Warcraft, and Blizzard has really defined themselves three Titan players, a fourth now being Overwatch. But StarCraft itself is just huge. There's just so much story, passion behind the strategic gameplay of this that outside of the games, there's a bunch of novelizations, manga, and short stories. So, have you read any of these novels or anything?
No, I have not, which kind of sucks. Like I've actually looked for them before,
Mm-hmm.
like after I got out of college and stuff, but they don't really produce them anymore. So it's really hard to come across it. But yeah, I would love to get them.
Because
Because it's sort of
sorry, I'm looking at the list right here, and I'll just run through them real quick before we go into more detail. Because I personally would love to jump into some of this reading. You have The Uprising, which is 2491, which is effectively a prequel to the first game and depicts the formation of the Sons of Corral. Uh,
yep.
Liberty's Crusade, 2499 to 2500, which is a side sequel to Rebel Yell. Shadows of Xel'Naga, which is set between StarCraft and Brood War. Speed of Darkness, which is set in the early stages of Rebel Yell. Queen of the Blades, which is a side sequel to Overmind and to an extent The Fall. I Menx, which is an interesting
Thanks.
title.
Yeah. True.
Um, has some overlap with the games, but its main purpose, arguably, is to fill out the backstories of Arcturus and Valerian. Heaven's Devils, which is from 2488 to 89, which is fills out the backstories of Raynor and Tychus. Devil's
Hmm.
Due, very little info, but from what you put here, you're guessing it takes place at the end of 2495 and cover is pretty much a sequel to Heaven's Devils.
Yep. And it's
Uh,
just yeah.
Nova, it mainly takes place during Rebel Yell, but it's quite self-contained, and the main purpose is to give you more backstory to the Nova character. Spectres, which gives you info about Project Shadowblade, and Dark Templar Saga, which is a prequel to StarCraft 2. So those are the novels that are out there. Whew.
Yeah, I know. It's like you're gonna go into it, but yeah.
To think that you have a video game, which is, we'll just say 5 video games, essentially, and to have that much story there, that's crazy. Because if you
Well,
look at the,
they develop characters. Like that is one thing Blizzard, when you think about anything they do, is they really develop characters. Even in the Warcraft, Diablo, they develop characters.
which is crazy, because
You
if you
can't
look at
deny it.
the attention span of the generation that plays games now, Fortnite, to me, there's no characters. There's people
If
with
there is, I don't know
costumes.
it.
Yeah, there's
If there
people with
is, I don't know it.
costumes.
Like
So,
all I know about Fortnite is they do dances.
exactly. Whenever you talk to someone younger who plays that, it's like, I need this skin.
Oh
Not
yeah,
like,
that too.
I,
Yeah.
I don't want to be Jim Raynor or I want to be Kerrigan. Like, there's a backstory to when you say those characters. Whereas a lot of the characters given to the younger generation now that are the most popular games, there's nothing. There's no substance to it. And usually why people like us can't get into those games.
I I never actually thought about it that way, but you're right. Yeah.
Because,
It's even like if you think about Apex and stuff, there's no real story behind any of these people. It's just
but in theory,
player.
there's more story in Apex to Fortnite, and we were drawn more to Apex.
They're trying to
Yeah.
give more story because at least each individual hero is or legend or whatever you want to call it is something. But yeah,
To whereas Fortnite to me is each season's a money grab. How can we make the
Yeah,
characters look different? That's it.
exactly. I mean, I just think it's crazy that like in that game they would literally have competitions to figure out, oh, what's the best dance, and then they would just put it in there and not give the people who created anything.
Yeah.
And like that was the whole thing that was crazy to me. It's just like, really? So you want your player base to basically develop your shit for you and you give them nothing back for it?
Yeah.
Like that, if you think about a lot of the games, like um Dota, you can talk about, let me think, who else is good?
Well,
CSGO,
I
where
was
they
gonna
all
say
have
any
like
of
these
these battle games.
customized skins. Like you can create the custom skin and then they would only take a portion of the profit, right? Not the whole thing, just a portion. Um, and then you would get the rest, which is completely different than how Fortnite works. Fortnite just wants everything. They're just a complete money grab, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
And to me, that's as much as I rag on Blizzard when we do our Tuesday night show. That is the beauty of that company. This company's attention to detail and backstory and everything having a purpose. It's a lost art form, I think, when it comes to video games sometimes. And the fact
Yeah.
that you can have novels based on this, Warcraft eventually gets movies. I would kill for like a Netflix series or a Disney Plus, just some kind
Yeah.
of run on StarCraft, and essentially using what's already there, you could build seasons out of it.
I agree. I would love to see, because they made a Warcraft one. I would love to see another Warcraft movie. I would love to see it. I
Yeah,
know
like
it didn't do too well, but there was so much like I recognize a lot. Like the problem is if you don't actually play the game, you don't recognize all the like the little nuggets that they put in it, all the Easter eggs. Like I know you watch a shit ton of Marvel and stuff. Like you recognize way more shit in, like the Avengers and Iron Man,
mm-hmm,
all that shit than I do because I didn't. I'm not a real big comic book fan or whatever. I mean, I know about it, but I don't know about it.
mm-hmm.
Um, but I mean, I got a ton of enjoyment out of the Warcraft. I guarantee I got more enjoyment out of the Warcraft one because like I actually understood the lore and what I was seeing. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean?
No, it makes
Where
100%. I
yeah,
totally get that.
so it's like I kind of wish they would like. Unfortunately, it didn't do well in the state. It did really well in China apparently. Um, but I really wish they would make another one because I really enjoyed that. And then I really wish they would go into the rest of their games. Like a Diablo one, I think would be amazing as well. Amazing.
Yep, and to
Going,
me, that would be more identifiable to a broader audience.
yeah, because you don't need to. I mean, there's lore there, like Kane and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I would love it, but you can kind of it's not as because really it's good versus evil, and you have all these devil minions and stuff. So yeah, you're right. You can easily make that one more broad based, but God, I would just love it if they would just start making these games into actual full length movies.
It's a shame. I think when it comes to StarCraft, the closest we'll get so far. I mean, I'm not like can't knock it because you can never say never. All the shit they make. The closest we'll get to a StarCraft movie is Starship Troopers.
Yeah, yeah, you ain't. That's a good point. You ain't kidding on that one.
But
Uh,
again, you can never say never because
you don't know. Yeah, you don't know.
they're remaking things like great Bad Boys for Life. 20 years after that second movie, they made a third one. Like the well is running dry in Hollywood to the point where they go, hey, we have this StarCraft franchise. Let's give it a shot. Uh,
I'm hoping because The Witcher on Netflix, like that, like the fact that that's doing well makes me so happy because again, you need more of these video game
well, yeah,
movies because before you used to have like the Mario thing where it bombed completely because it just wasn't.
they're so good now because of how bad they were.
Yeah, but it needs to have that ability to like where we get a couple good ones out there and
And I think we
then
have.
Hollywood goes freaking bonkers on it. Like
Well, I
bonk.
think we have because if you think about it, we've had Detective Pikachu, which was a really good success.
I was gonna say that one's good, but the Sonic one scares me because I don't know what the hell they're doing there. But like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It either succeeds or it bombs miserably. Because you used to, I remember you had the fighting game, Mortal Kombat 1 and 2.
well, that's in production for a new one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But let's see what
No,
happens, I
you're
guess.
right, but hell, they made the one big joke that I think of is Battleship. They made a movie about Battleship.
That was
It
so
made by
bad it was
Hasbro.
good. It was
Well,
so bad it was good. That
exactly,
was the
but
problem.
I think in recent years they've gotten away from that because Rampage, I really enjoyed that movie, and that's based off of the arcade game. Detective Pikachu was really good. Just like
Yeah.
The Witcher's doing successful. Like they're starting to see like and kind of hand in hand, they're doing the same thing with anime now.
Yeah.
Like that worked well. Let's do it again. It's pissing off the anime fans because it's nowhere close to the damn anime, but it's
Yeah.
hitting that broader audience, and they go, maybe we can make a Death Note too.
Yeah. Like I'm actually wondering if a movie series like The Witcher it makes more sense for video games just because there's so much lore and you need to do so much character building.
Yeah, and that's
Because
why
you
I
kind
think
of have to like introduce people to this character. Because if you're not familiar with the game, like that's the problem. Like flat out, that was the problem with the Warcraft
Warcraft.
because you didn't understand. It kind of dropped you in there with the assumption that you understood what you were looking at. Like they didn't have enough time to actually build up to a. It's sort of like which was good. I enjoyed it, but the Netflix movie Will Smith where he's
Bright.
fighting the Bright, yeah, where you don't really get the background of it. You know what I mean? Like that one sort of works. I know it kind of bombed, kind of.
They're
I
making a
liked
second.
it. They're making a second one, thank
Yeah,
God. But I really liked it. But you kind of have to. It's sort of in the same vein as a lot of these games where you have to kind of give
I
it a
think
great assault unless you're going to make it a series. Because if you make it a series, you can at least then start building the character, just like how StarCraft built all of these characters.
and I
It
think
just didn't take one game, it took multiple games to build them up.
that's the beauty of the streaming service because instead of making a 2 hour movie where you're gonna cram shit in, you get a 10 hour attempt at it. And
Yeah.
like you had said with The Witcher, very successful. Imagine if they did that with Tomb Raider. Because Tomb Raider, for whatever reason, has not been able to get its
Yeah.
footing in the movie theaters, but there is
I,
so much story there.
yeah. Again, it's like, I don't know if it should be a series or maybe even like a mini series. Like, because they need more time. That's the problem with any of these games that try going into the movies. There's just not enough time to allow a new audience to understand what the hell they're looking at. Like
Exactly.
that's the problem because there's just so much lore there. Unless you were there from the beginning, you're fucked. You're fucked.
Well, hell, look, like you had brought it up earlier with the Mortal Kombat example. They have gone. They're on their 13th game. 10 of the games ran, or actually 9 of the games ran through a story. On the 10th game, they reset. Literally had a
Yeah,
storyline to reset Mortal Kombat going forward, involving the other 9 stories. So, like, you want to make a movie of Mortal Kombat, and you're like, I want to put everything in there, 2 hours. It's just not going to work.
yeah.
So,
It's impossible.
when it comes to StarCraft, and we've kind of gotten to the future talk of where is it going to go with it. We haven't had a new game. Well, the last official one was the remaster in 2017. 2016 was the last new content. Well, I don't know when Commanders came out.
Well, they're still coming out with new commanders. That's not, and I don't think they're ever going to stop doing that for a long time. They announce a new commander pretty much every commander to every BlizzCon.
Okay,
So
so there's
I
kind
mean,
of like a patchable game out there that kind of keeps the legacy going. But
uh,
where do you see it going? Do you think we'll get a start like you had said a little bit earlier, StarCraft 3, but again, new faces?
I, well,
Or the better question is, do you think
yeah.
StarCraft 3 same style of play, or are we going to be taken into a new gameplay for StarCraft?
All right. So this is sort of I don't know if it's really a StarCraft discussion. more so as a Blizzard discussion. Is my only problem here. Um, Blizzard, if you look at their track record, um, they're going to come out with a new Diablo,
Yep.
right? So Diablo 4, they've already basically announced it at the last BlizzCon
After all the backlash for the mobile game. Yep.
because of the mobile game. So the next game that I think personally that they're going to create is going to be a Warcraft 4. I think the next strategy game in this genre is going to be Warcraft 4.
So do you think that backseats the StarCraft 3 and gets you the StarCraft
Yes.
MMO that we've all been craving?
Yeah, it's going to have to backseat it because they're not going to want to produce two strategy games.
Okay.
So, I, unfortunately, I don't think if they do come out with a new StarCraft, it's probably going to be 15 plus years
From now.
from, yeah,
So
easily.
so you're saying it's going to be almost 22 years from Wings of Liberty's release.
Yeah, and I think there's a better chance of Blizzard folding before that happens,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
So
Just because of all the shit that they're doing, but yeah.
damn. That's a very bleak future conversation to have, sir.
I know, but it's just sort of how they handle it. They go from one game to the next, and they don't want to release two strat. I mean,
And the damn shame is
unless
there's Overwatch too.
unless yeah, well, Overwatch they're just gonna keep pumping out. Unless the only unless here is if the next Warcraft thing is a reboot Warcraft as an MMO. That's the only way you're gonna get a StarCraft out sooner.
Is it they put out another expansion to World of Warcraft?
Well, no, they keep putting out expansions, like literally reboot the entire World of Warcraft, like World of
Oh,
Warcraft 2.
so like
Like you have to regenerate completely because they're gonna keep producing every other fucking year, like they've been doing since the game came out, an expansion. That's just hands down. They're gonna do it unless they come out with a new MMO. I really don't think it's going to be a StarCraft one. I would love it to be. I don't think it's ever going to happen. I think that they would probably just redo the Warcraft MMO.
really?
So if they redo that, then you would probably see a StarCraft in probably less than 10 years.
That's crazy. Because I just assume
Yeah,
we'll be dead by then.
probably. Yeah, definitely, definitely dead by then.
Because I mean, the
Definitely.
track record is '98. You get the whole Brood War.
Yep.
2010 starts the launch of StarCraft 2, and then
Yep.
finally wraps up around we'll say 2015. So the 5 year span there. Um, there's 12 years between the first and second. If you did
Yep.
12 years between the finalization of the second and what we're going to be at, you're 2027.
Yeah. I don't see how you can get away from it because my problem is I know they don't want to compete. So that's the biggest thing they ever do. They don't want to compete because I think that what happened was they competed from StarCraft 2, not StarCraft 2, Warcraft to StarCraft to Warcraft 2. They
Mm-hmm.
started competing with each other. And they kind of stopped doing that is the problem. So then they started waiting between a decent amount of time before they would release another game in that genre. And I think that is also why Warcraft is an MMO and they're not developing Warcraft as a
Strategy.
strategy game, right? I
Makes
think they're
sense.
going to go back to Warcraft now because they did StarCraft. They got to wait X amount of time, which I think is. I really thought that the game that they were going to announce was going to be a Warcraft
Mm-hmm.
game, the Warcraft game, not Diablo, since they announced Diablo as a fucking
Mobile.
MMO. Like, what the fuck? I thought that was gonna skip over basically Diablo. Because I originally after StarCraft came out, I thought Diablo was gonna come back again, just because I didn't think they were gonna want to fuck with Warcraft.
Yeah.
But then when they released Diablo as a mobile game, I was like, all right, so then they're probably gonna release something for Warcraft now. So I assumed that they were gonna go back to a strategy game. And then they announced another fucking Diablo game. So I'm apparently shooting wrong here all over the place, but yeah. So now that they named that as the next one is Diablo, I think it's gonna go. I really think it's going to be another Warcraft strategy
Okay.
game. And then it would have to go back to Diablo, and then you would probably get a StarCraft.
So before we wrap everything up here tonight, are there any final thoughts on the game that I think, and this is just a personal note, strengthened our bond as friends because you and I were on it a lot. Not nearly as much as you and other people, but you and I like had a lot of footing in this game. Any final thoughts on the franchise itself?
I mean, I thought this game was amazing. I think I had way more fun with the original, just because I can tie so much more of my childhood to it. I mean, we
Makes
had
sense.
Ian Gallagher. We had so many
Oh,
people that
we
we
were a
actually
squad deep.
played with. Yeah, and then we used it as a strengthening your relationship, whereas nowadays it's your only friends are online. You've never seen these people before.
Which is a
Whereas,
crazy thought.
yeah, whereas we used it back in the day as, we're home and it's raining out, so we play online.
Yeah.
Not, because that's what we do. Um,
And to me, it
so,
was also a game that everybody had. Not necessarily you had to be a gamer to play it. For whatever reason, we all had it.
I mean, yeah, I mean, you kind of skipped over it, but I kind of had the copy sold up there, which was kind of
Yeah.
mind blowing at how many copies um,
So
of
yeah, it was
StarCraft were
10
sold.
million copies by 2007,
Yeah, and
almost
there was
10 years
11 million.
after its release.
Yeah, and there's 11 million copies sold as of year to date when I fucking made that thing, which is puts it in the top 7 of
Yeah.
all fucking games. Like you can't like you say that, but this is a 1998 game, and they're in the top copies sold. Like that's insanity, considering freaking COD and shit doesn't really even make that list because I mean, it's a money generating machine, but they don't like sell the amount of copies that like these older games do because one, they didn't have as much competition, I guess, but people played the shit out of these games.
And I think it goes back to what we talked about earlier. If you look at the list that you had printed out, and I should have talked about it, but number 7 is StarCraft, number 4 is World of Warcraft, number 3 is Diablo 3. That just goes to show you that Blizzard puts time and effort into these projects that always draw people in. It's
Yeah,
not
I
just
mean
like
they
a cash grab. I mean, they're getting more cash grabby these days, but back then they weren't.
yeah, I think a lot of that cash grabby thing is just because of Activision and then the mergers that had happened since then. But yeah, it's God, I love that. I love basically all Blizzard. Okay, there's nothing in Blizzard I don't like. It's the problem.
Your,
Fanboy, I know.
your
Whatever.
reaction right now is why we have a Jizzard Entertainment shirt on tpublic.com/Dace Man Show.
Exactly. But nothing that they do is really like I mean, obviously the way they've handled the whole Hong Kong thing is kind of annoying, but there's none of their games I don't like. I mean, I still play Hearthstone because it's on mobile. That's like the best thing ever. Thank God they did that. Um, I still play StarCraft 2 every once in a while, not as much as I used to, but I really want to get back into WoW, but that's such a freaking time sink. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I'm shocked to see the people that get back into it each time, like you had said earlier.
Yeah, it's like I mean, you saw it, but Padre got sucked back in when Vanilla came out for
Yeah.
fucking months, months,
My
and
sister
that's
got
just what
sucked
it
into it,
does.
and she's not a fan of it. So that's the
Yeah,
crazy thing. She's like, "Oh,
it's
it was
just,
cool." 6 months later, like, yeah, I'm still playing, but it's not that great. It's 6 months later. I'm still playing, but okay,
but I'm still playing.
yeah, but
Yeah,
I'm still playing.
still playing.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's StarCraft was like, if to me, was the quintessential game. Like this was probably the game that made me a gamer, to be honest. Because I used to play Super Nintendo. I remember playing like Super Mario Brothers and stuff and all that, but I never really like played it. I mean, I played it, but I didn't like sink a shit ton of time into it. Like if it
yeah.
was nice outside, I was going outside.
I
StarCraft
do think that's a
literally the game that made me a hermit to stay inside.
I do think that's a good note to make that, console games during our childhood was like, I'll play for an hour and I'm going to go ride my bike. But when, like you said, you got into StarCraft, it's like, holy shit, where did the sun go? Like,
Yep.
it just time passed so much because there's so much detail. You were so into it. You were on with friends. it was the social network for us at the time.
Yeah, which is crazy. I mean, I still went outside, at least with StarCraft, but
Yeah.
we definitely built stronger bonds with the friends I knew. And it was allowed us to do stuff when we couldn't actually hang out. I mean, I definitely played way more of that than any other video game,
Oh,
at
for
least
sure.
as of that time. It's just insanity at how, to me, Blizzard started my gaming career, my gaming fucking lifestyle.
And as a
Just
kid,
because.
this type of game didn't tie up the TV, so your parents got pissed off you were playing the console the whole time. You were over in your corner playing on your computer as they could watch TV or do whatever they were doing. And
Yeah.
like you said, once you couldn't hang out with your friends, so maybe like you're out running around between after school and when sun goes down. Come home, take a shower, got on the computer, hung out with your friends again playing StarCraft.
Yeah, for me, it was pretty much like after, pretty much exactly. Once the sun went down, usually it was after like soccer practice or after I got back in, is when I would start playing.
Yep.
And you would play for, 2, 3 hours, depending upon, when the sun went down,
Yeah. And
till,
the day of the
you
week.
went to bed. And then WoW came out, and then it was like, who sleeps?
Yeah. And the crazy thing too is, and we didn't touch base on this, if you think about StarCraft the original, this is probably where a lot of that lingo started coming into play. Where you started
Yeah,
shortening phrases because you're trying to
lead speak,
click
yep.
in a battle, but you also had to get messages out because you didn't have a Discord at the time or anything where you had audio.
At least that's the first time that I remember lead speak, yes.
Yeah.
Which is shortening of all your things, putting a shit ton of abbreviations together, numbers and mixing numbers and letters together.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I remember that. That is,
Crazy.
I don't know if it was developed because of that or, was around beforehand, but that's when I was first introduced to that.
Yeah. Because you had to have the hotkey to kick up that messenger bar, get your message out real quick, and get right back to the action.
Yeah, because you had it's not like today's games where, a lot of the games build in these voice things to where, you can talk back and forth. The only way you can talk back and forth between you and a teammate or you and people in there is you had to type it. You had to type it. So you had to, the longer you're typing, the less you're doing on screen.
Which was absolutely a nightmare for teachers.
Exactly.
we were that brief generation that didn't have audio, but we had to get our message out quick. And then it's now gotten into these weird words that aren't actually words that end up in the dictionary, and I don't know what's happening with my life.
I mean, now it's probably, if it was nowadays, it'd probably be worse because, like, all this text messaging and stuff, people freaking.
Oh, yeah. They're making up words.
Now it's fucking just emojis. It's like, I don't understand what you're saying to me. It's just an eggplant. I don't understand.
We'll have a side conversation once we get done here about what the eggplant means. But
it's like, what the fuck?
Hey, I enjoyed this stroll down memory lane as we talked about StarCraft. God, great times. I really want to play the game again. Before we go, got to tell the world, what are you up to?
God, please. You guys can just email me at dacemanshow@gmail.com. We keep playing Minecraft. I don't know. I would like to start streaming, but I gotta actually build a new computer because even though mine works for playing games, it doesn't have the horsepower anymore to stream. It's the problem. Because I'd like to get back to actually streaming on my computer instead of streaming on my PlayStation. Because right now, pretty much the only thing I can stream is Apex.
Yeah.
Which kind of sucks. But we'll see what happens. Eventually, I'm hoping I can get one this year. If all the cards land right. And I'm not really sure when this is going to air, fortunately.
I'm hoping we are talking to the listeners in the month of February. If not, awkward.
Awkward. Well, in that case, we also have our Game-a-thon coming up. Gotta plug that whenever we can, right?
It should definitely be out before then.
Yeah. So if it's not out, it's always in
March. Daylight savings time.
March. Yeah, daylight savings time. If it's not, 7,
look forward to the
8,
next one.
It'll be 9, it'll be 10. It's always daylight savings time in March.
Yeah.
Where we support a cause and game like idiots for 24 hours.
23 because we cheat.
23, yeah, 23 because we cheat. And it seems to be a lot more old school games. If you think about how we play, not many new school.
And
Even though I guess
after what they just listened to for almost 2 hours.
exactly. I would love it if we could get a computer set up and we can actually play computer games, but that might be a little a little difficult.
That's Dave's tactical game for cause X10.
Exactly. We're still trying to get some of the logistics down, but you come out, watch us, support us. We also have our Twitch, which I'm sure this will post on at some point in time.
Yes, but we need a rerun.
Yeah, many reruns.
Thank you guys for tuning in. As you can always hear myself and Gibbous on Tuesday nights, the Dace Man Show, where it's a kind of like a news show every week. Live, you can talk to us, chat to us on twitch.tv/DaceMan and Friends. Thank you for joining us for another Podern Nerd. I, as always, love these conversations to talk about whatever, with whomever, who love and adore the topics. And today we talked about StarCraft in the world of Blizzard Entertainment. So, I still don't have a catchy outro. I think Frank Klein ushered me off with some doot-to-doot noises. We'll figure it out. Hope you enjoyed Podern Nerd, and we'll see you next time.